Okay, so welcome everyone to the April, well, we're in April already, 2025 Microsoft 365 Modern Management Meetup. Now, I think we're missing a few people this month, so we knew Steve wasn't going to be able to make it today. I wasn't sure about your own, whether he was coming along or not, but I got to actually see him in person. Um, at some point in the last couple of weeks. So just for those of you who don't know me, my name's Mike O'Shea. I'm a Windows and Windows 365 MVP. And I guess I'll just get Aresh to do a quick intro as well.
Good day, guys. My name is Aresh. I'm a Windows 365 and Azure Virtual Desktop MVP, and I work for Dell Technologies.
And I'm just updating that slide to.
And we are missing our homies, Steve especially.
Yeah, so he let us know in advance so that we didn't try to organize anything in person. That would have been a little bit of a problem. Okay, so let's just jump on in and we'll go through the agenda. So we'll just do some introductions for anyone that's new in just a moment. The event section, I've actually updated it a little bit because it used to be future events, but it also occurred to me that maybe if there was an event in the previous month where session recordings are available, it might be worth promoting. I know it's kind of dumb that I wasn't doing. It's one of those things where you don't think about it, and then it's like, oh yeah, it's kind of a good reminder that especially when things happen in different time zones, that we're not going to get up at 1 a.m. to watch something in the US or something like that. So for the topics, really here the idea, I wanted to try something a little bit different today, which was not go into too much depth on the topics, but really use them as kind of teasers to see what are the related areas or more in-depth parts of the conversations that we need to go into. And I think, any of you who've joined before, one of the challenges that we always have is, coming up with, new topics that, not just ones that we want to talk about, but ones that other people want to actually listen to. So we've got a few things this month. So Windows 11 hot patch is starting to get some attention. There's been some updates around Copilot Plus PCs that I wanted to sort of just throw in here. And then I think we're sort of due sometime very soon for the Win365 Disaster Recovery Plus to go GA. So it's sometime this quarter that it's due, but no specifics there. And then the final piece, just general discussion where we stop the recording in case anyone's got anything that they don't really want recorded and analyzed and processed and summarized by Copilot. Okay, so just if anyone wants to do a quick introduction, either like anyone who hasn't been around for a while or someone who's joining for the first time, either unmute and do a quick introduction, or just if you're microphone shy, just drop a comment into chat, and that's also good. Jose is here. So Jose, there's a special bullet point on a slide that I have coming up for you.
I'm not going. Thanks, but I'm not going to be here long. I'm just arriving at home, and I saw Tom call out to say I'm going to come and say hi. Is that okay? Is that about our Windows 365 hot patching and auto patch? I hope
it's something you and I were kind of giving each other weird looks about, and shrugging our shoulders and. Yeah, coming to very different conclusions based on.
Oh, I'll send you the documentation. I found the documentation somewhere that specifies that. So.
Yeah, it's So we'll get to that. So there's a great mystery and there's confusion that we'll get into a bit later.
Cool.
Yeah, and it's especially fantastic when you've got people talking about things within the same presentation, where basically the one slide conflicts with the slide before it. Nothing like that kind of thing. But the reason why there's conflict, it's pretty easy to to explain that. Okay, so Oh, sorry. So yeah, so I guess just if anyone wants to do an intro, please feel free to do so. But if not, no stress about that.
Yeah, I'll do a short one.
Yeah, Nikki, go ahead. Yeah.
Hey everybody, my name is Nikki de Westelink. I'm a modern workplace consultant from Belgium, and yeah, I'm mostly specialized, it's a big word, in the Intune part, but also a global Microsoft 365 knowledge. And I've attended already a few of these meetups, but it's been a while. So glad to be back.
Okay, so just to test the "it's a small world" theory that that everybody knows everyone. Do you know Eric Moreau?
Yes. I know him. Yeah, I know him. Yeah, I always I see him on some evening events here in Belgium.
Okay,
I think he's also part of some community, and recently I started with some colleagues and some fellow enthusiasts of the Workplace Ninjas group in Belgium.
Oh, okay.
So he's more. Every event I attend, he's there. So
yeah. I thought that would be a pretty safe guess.
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
Okay, well, welcome. Well, I guess not welcome, but welcome back.
Thank you.
Okay, so for events, so I mentioned that it kind of makes sense to talk about things that may have occurred in different time zones where the session recordings are now available. And so probably just the first one here, and I'll drop the link into chat for this because there's a bunch of different recordings available for this. But basically, it was like 3 days for the Windows and Intune on-demand session. Now, if you joined today to hear Steve talk, what you can do instead is jump onto one of these, and Steve, there's at least one session of Steve's on there, and it's on Kiosk, which Steve loves talking about. So if you want that, that one is definitely up there. That was something where I sort of turned the TV on in the morning and sort of thought, oh, what app do I open? And I thought, oh, I'll just open up YouTube and see what's on. And that video was on my home screen, and I didn't know who was presenting. I just saw the Windows kiosk mode, and I'm like, I know who that is. So I just sort of clicked on it, and it's like, yep, I don't need to listen to that. Steve will tell me all about it anyway. Okay, so a lot of good content there. I guess the challenge that we always have these days is content. Just overwhelming amounts of content that's coming through. Now, in terms of upcoming events, in terms of build, like normally this would be, well, I guess going back a few years, build probably wouldn't have been one that we focused on or we kind of discussed too much here. But I think we'll probably see a bunch of Copilot Plus PC, small, SLMs, etc., down on the desktop side. So I think there will be, probably a bit more of even though desktop won't be the focus of this, obviously, it's all going to be about consuming AI services in Azure, no doubt. I think we'll probably see more of a client OS representation here than we've seen for quite a few years. So it'll be good to actually see what announcements, etc., are made at that. So that's still just over a month away. And in good old downtown Seattle, where it hasn't done a great job of recovering from the COVID shutdowns. Okay, so that sort of brings us into the first topic, which is Windows 11 auto patch. So don't worry, Jose, we haven't gotten to, or has Jose dropped off already?
He has.
He has. Okay, but he's dropped some links in. That's okay. Okay, yeah. We're not at the Jose slide yet. Okay, so I guess here, the reason why I wanted to sort of just do something quickly on this is probably this third bullet point, and explaining where confusion kicks in about it. So people see hot patch, that the updates don't require a restart. But what you have to sort of remember here is, it's the full sentence. It's hot patch updates don't require a restart. And there's a few things that are sort of going on around this, but if we sort of just look at it at a high level, we basically get, whatever that update applies is immediately applied. We don't need to wait for a system restart to get things like, security updates, etc., applied to it. It's consistent with that monthly security updates that would be rolled out. And you'll see in the following slides, there are some timelines where you can see basically how things keep synchronized with each other. Now, back to that hot patch updates don't require a system restart. Well, there might be other things that do require a feature restart. But the good news here, though, is that the core Windows Update team is working closely with other teams that push stuff into Windows Update, WFB, etc., and trying to get them to sort of follow the same kind of cycle in terms of, if it's not a core security update, but it does require a restart, can it be pushed to the next month? Is there any harm in doing that? Now, I can see where there'd be people saying, well, whatever it is, we want it faster, because if it's not a security update, then it's probably like a reliability or a performance update or something along those lines. So, we won't, I don't think we need to sort of discuss the merit or, the pros and cons of should the different product teams at Microsoft that leverage Windows Update infrastructure try to align with this. I guess it just sort of really depends on how much that group, what their focus is. If they're not really that interested in their impact on restarts, not too much of an issue there. But other things in there, things like OS features. Now, by OS features, probably the big one here would be things like your .NET framework updates. Now, in this case, that's an example where that's kind of like an obvious one where they're trying to make sure that there is alignment. So in that case, that's going to be fine. But with things like drivers, in a lot of cases these days, like there are a lot of drivers that don't require a restart. So drivers aren't as problematic as they used to be in terms of, almost anything required a system restart. We just don't see that as much with drivers. However, firmware updates. Obviously, if we're going to be updating system firmware, then that is something that we would need to do a system update. Also, we would need to restart the system for. And then other things like application updates, where people are pushing applications out, etc. So there's a few questions that I want to ask related to these in a couple of slides' time. But the user experience over here is basically just showing them that the latest security update was installed without a restart. Now, I don't really think that users, or apart from people like us, I don't think the typical user ever looks at the Windows Update UI unless IT directs them to do it, or unless you're visiting a family member and you're like, oh, I wonder how long they haven't updated for. So that's something, at least we can sort of see a nice visual representation of that. But this is the slide, oops, it jumped ahead one too many. This is the slide that I was sort of talking about as the Jose slide. And let me just check to see those links that Jose dropped into chat, because I don't think the link he dropped in there. Actually, no, it does. Okay. So let's come back to that in a moment. Okay, so the first thing here is in terms of requirements. Some of the things where we were getting, or where we've been getting mixed signals, is not the Windows 11 24H2 part, but the Windows 11 Enterprise part of the conversation. Tom, from the look on your face, and I think you and Jose may have had some conversations about that, but it's one of those weird things where I guess there's a couple of different ways you can look at it. Like a big part of me looks at this and goes, we wouldn't have to have this conversation if Windows Business Edition didn't exist. And if they just said, hey, you've got Business Premium, let's move you over to Windows Enterprise. And we could argue that that would make sense because, if people say, well, would that cannibalize Windows 11 Enterprise sales? It's like, I haven't seen any statistics, but I guarantee you the percentage of people who add a Windows 11 Enterprise license to a business premium tenant would be low single digits, if that. But the flip side of it, though, and this is where it's more problematic, would it potentially get some organizations to step down from M365 E3 licenses down to business premium? And that's the one that I think there is actually the potential that something like that would be a possibility. So, there's so many just little messaging pieces, confusion around what can Windows do or not do in different M365 plans that getting rid of business would deal with that. But it's been the problem ever since Business Premium was introduced, or when it was still business, when they introduced the Windows 10 business SKU at the time. It just causes confusion. People don't quite know what it is, etc. The messaging from Microsoft gets kind of mixed because you'll find in a lot of cases, and this is what Jose and I were experiencing, were people who are used to saying Windows 11 Enterprise because that's what they're used to saying. They say that automatically without thinking about, Windows 11 Business may also apply. And pretty much it's the same thing as when somebody's so used to saying Microsoft 365 apps for enterprise, when they should just be saying Microsoft 365 apps, because it could also be the business versions in there as well. So with that one, in terms of the business premium side, we can take a look at the that post that Jose dropped into chat before he disappeared. But here we just go through, we can create, hot patch enabled quality update policy. Let me just swap out to the browser quickly so we can take a look at this one. And there we go. Edit Windows quality update policy. When available, apply without restarting the device. Hot patch. So turn it on, turn it off. In this case, I haven't actually applied it to anything in this tenant because this tenant likes to do things that align better with the Copilot Plus portion we're about to get to. So I don't think there'll be any devices in this tenant that actually get to use Hot Patch, but it's not a problem with Hot Patch. It's that they're doing something different that Hot Patch doesn't address there. And one of the other requirements down there is that virtualization-based security is enabled, which should be happening anyway on devices by this point, but you just never know what things people are or aren't enabling. And when we see things like this enabled, again, I see it as something where there'll be some people saying, Microsoft is forcing VBS on us in order to use this feature. And my counter argument to that, or my argument against that, is force is a very, very strong word. I won't give examples of what force actually means because none of them would be appropriate for a session that's being recorded. But it's more a matter of, you get a choice. You can use Hot Patch with virtualization-based security, or if you don't want VBS, don't use Hot Patch. There, easy. Yeah, easy conversation. Kind of like the Microsoft is forcing me to go to the cloud. It's like, how? How are they doing that? So here we start to see what the schedule or the time frame is. And basically it's a quarterly rhythm here where every 3 months, you basically, you'll get hot patches for 2 months, and then you'll get the same baseline update as other people during that time period. Now, some of the nice things about hot patches during this period is that when you're getting hot patches, they're actually smaller. So basically, faster to install, faster to apply. So if somebody sort of is saying, look, I want everything patched as quickly as possible, ignoring the whole restart process, then hot patching is still faster in that case because a restart just isn't required there at all. But then once we get down to those quarterly updates, basically it's, effectively you sort of think of it that everything then is synchronized there. But notice once again here, though, where with the no restart, again, just sort of being very careful with that is that the no restart is from the hot patch updates, not from other random updates or installs that you're doing there. And I think that's one of the things that I think is, you just know that there'll be feedback from people saying, oh, we've enabled hot patch, but machines are still restarting. And you'll go, okay, well, what else? Yeah, what else is there? And that sort of ties into one of the things that I've got on the next slide, which is when we take a look at, like, if we really want to start, leveraging hot patch and trying to really make sure that we're only having to, like, technically, restart the system once every 3 months. Now, I think, again, a lot of cases, like, if it's something that I know I'm not going to use for a while, I still tend to shut machines down anyway. So for me, for my own personal use, hot patching isn't that big a deal most of the time. But if we then think about the implications of if somebody really wants to leverage hot patching, then how do we approach the other updates? So things like the driver updates, application updates, etc. So I've specifically put in here, we don't want to delay security updates. Obviously, that's a problem. And I think here, especially when it comes to things like application updates or, that might require a restart. I'm not going to sort of name any vendor in particular there, but your typical app that sort of puts out an update, the chances are there are security updates in there. So so that's something where I would say if it's purely like a performance or reliability kind of thing, and you're not having performance or reliability issues with that app, then maybe delaying it to synchronize with that same Windows update, restart may take time. But I can't really see a lot of organizations really sitting down and mapping this out on a, let's schedule these updates on a quarterly basis. I think, over time, maybe if people are sort of in greenfields environments and they can plan things out, or they've got an opportunity to revisit their patching strategy, like I think, aligning different updates to map out to, is a restart required or not, kind of makes sense in the long term. But for now, I just I just can't see it really being an organization really changing their approach. So I guess just a few questions that I've got around this is, so first of all, just are you planning on, even if it's just for internal usage, trying out hot patching, and have you sort of thought about that quarterly cadence around how is it going to potentially change your views around how you should be pushing other updates out? So any takers? And while people sort of think about that, let me just go back so I can have a look at that.
Mark, I just wanted to highlight one more aspect of the patch, because that's pretty common from a patching perspective, that a rollback, one has to think that it's an uninstall, reinstall, there's no rollback. So keep that in mind with hot patch. And unfortunately, it calls that out at the very bottom, which most of the people would not read, but worth highlighting and mentioning this for the journey.
Okay, so so you can't roll back, but you can uninstall.
Yeah.
Okay,
uninstall. That's right. Yeah. So I've pasted it in the chat as well, that it remains there for reference, because people are habitual from thinking about rollback if it's patching, right?
Yeah. Okay, so good news is the article article on Loan that Jose sent through actually does address the thing that I wanted to cover around the auto patching piece. So just to sort of show you where there's kind of this conflicting messaging. So in this case, if we sort of just take a look at the, what is Windows auto patch, and in this case, it's talking about features included with Business Premium, as well as anything else that includes Windows Enterprise. And if we come down, we get to hot patch updates, and it's basically saying, yes, it supports that. But let's just go, let me just grab something from the slide, from an earlier slide. Yeah, let me just jump out to this post. So in this case, notice hot patch public preview updates of Windows 11 version 24H2 Enterprise. Now, and this is what you'll find in a lot of the other documentation. It will say Enterprise, but my gut feeling here is it's just people who are so used to saying, putting Enterprise at the end of Windows or at the end of 24H2 or after they say the number 11, that they're not think that, and and if it's people who only deal with enterprise customers, business being part of Business Premium isn't something that they think about. So I don't think it's actually deliberate that they're sort of that they're telling you it's enterprise. I actually just think that it's just a behavior or a pattern or a behavior that people need to break. So again, going back to, you'll see a lot of documentation where they talk about, here are the things you can do with Microsoft apps for enterprise, but it's exactly the same set of things you could do with Microsoft 365 apps for business. And so I think we're just going to see, quite a few articles, talking about that kind of thing. And I think, oops, that's not the one that I wanted. There was one other post that it doesn't look as if I kept the link in chat here. But Leah, I just sort of think here that enterprise piece is, well, it's already documented. So it's already now over there here saying that, it's set in stone. Business Premium includes hot patch updates. And so the other thing as well here, just in general to take note of, is if you go, let's say if we sort of go back 6 to 12 months, when they were actually probably even longer, when they first started talking about, merging Windows Update for Business and Windows Auto Patch. And one of the problems with the messaging at the time was Windows Auto Patch only supported people with M365, A3, A5, etc. It's at E3. So basically, it's so then that sort of put the here we go. So if we then so there still are some differentiators in here, but this is it. It's saying that if you've got M365 E3, so basically if you've got enterprise versions of Windows, then you can submit support requests with the auto patch service engineering team. And if you've got Business Premium, you can't do it directly with the auto patch service engineering team. You just have to put in a regular support request, I guess. So still one difference, but initially it was one of those things where, trying to get the, trying to sort of get, they were sort of like trying to evaluate what would you get or not get with Business Premium. This is a much better story than what we've had previously. So when was this updated? It must have been 1st of April. So no surprise that it's got some good and useful information in there. So well done, Jose, for finding that one. Okay, so with this, I didn't want to go too much in here into just sort of general things around, Windows Auto Patch as well. But just to sort of throw a few ideas out there for things in the future, just to see what you're interested in, or if you want to add anything to this list around just updating, etc. I guess at some point again in the future, we probably should do a Windows Auto Patch revisit, now that it's applicable for those of you who do push Business Premium hard. And like in the Australian market, like Business Premium does really well because it matches well with organizational sizes here. So definitely not something we can ignore. Now, other things as well around updates and just sort of system recovery, etc. as well. Things like, Microsoft sort of putting a bit of a push back on, getting people to be able to leverage the Windows recovery environment. So this is part of the, the response to the incident that occurred last year where, for some reason there were some Windows machines that wouldn't boot. I can't remember what the details of it were. I think there was something that installed that was broken. We're just allowed to call it the incident. So basically there are other things that are happening there, like including Microsoft starting to push, telling people don't, why are you deleting the WinRE petition? It's something that could actually get you back up and running again at some point. Now, other things as well that have been added in recently, things like quality updates during UBI. So this is one of the things where I think it's kind of easy to sort of not pay attention to things that are happening around Windows updates because it's just something that happens in a lot of cases, but we don't always pay attention to the latest and greatest. But if there's anything else that anyone wants me to add to this list for future incorporation, let me know. And I think some of these are already generally available. So actually, I think all of them, actually, maybe, I don't know if quality updates is generally available just yet, but I can check on that. But otherwise, these are all things that, from next month onwards, I don't think there'd be any problem covering any of them. So anything else to add?
There's one potentially, but I don't think it's in preview yet. So we might be waiting a while for that. I don't know. I have to ask.
Okay. Is it announced?
I don't think so. I think people have dug around, but
yeah, we won't post it in here yet then. Yeah, we'll play it safe because I don't want to have to go and edit the video before I upload it. Okay, so with that then, up next, the Copilot Plus PC management. So there's just
before just you go forward, just if everyone wants to do a show of hands of people either POCing or exploring or already implemented hot patch, if people want to do just a show of hands, that'll be cool just to understand, like, what's happening in the enterprise.
Even if you've been using hot patch in like Windows Server VMs in Azure, for example, which is where I think they first appeared.
Yes. 2025, Windows Server 2025 as well. Or leave a comment that we are doing something about it in the chat. That any method is fine. Doesn't have to be.
But it's been like one of the things that people have been like requesting for decades. Like, we don't want Windows to restart after updates, and now it's available. So it's one of those things where we could say, well, you're saying that you've been screaming for it for years. Why aren't you using it?
Yeah.
And as Eddie says, or Eddie has a good reason though, like saying that that it wasn't. Yeah, the messaging has all been around Windows 11 Enterprise. Like, I think even if we go out to like even really recent tech community, let's do a search. What is it? So Microsoft Tech Community Windows 11 hot patch. Let's see where that takes us. Guess what word we're going to see?
Yeah.
So I have no idea why people are getting confused, because it's really clear and consistent messaging. Okay, but again, like, this is something where, like, here, like as I've sort of said a few times already, I just think this is basically just it's basically just like a reflex action or muscle memory as people are typing. They're putting in enterprise without thinking of the implications of saying enterprise there. Because I guess that's their way of saying that it's not available on Pro, but that's not the same as saying enterprise. So they just used to saying enterprise is a differentiator, but that's not the case any longer. Okay, so let's jump on into the Copilot Plus PC side. So there's a few things here before we actually get into just, I guess, some of the management type considerations here, just to sort of talk about the hardware, and I guess what does it mean in terms of like what are the future hardware standards going to be for, you know, a future generation of Windows. And I think we're starting to see some of that stuff start to play out. Now, in terms of the CPU, now I've got a confession to make, and I told Steve about it, and he hasn't spoken to me since. And if you take a look at the screenshot here, you'll notice that I didn't go for a Snapdragon. I went for an Intel. But it basically, though, that was because of audio drivers that are never going to be made available on non-Intel platforms. Intel or x64 drivers, unfortunately. So I basically chickened out and went down the path of the Intel, what is it, 285 or something. I don't even know what processor it is, but it's one of the, it's here. I don't know, can you see that? It's blocking the screen. And so here, so I guess here the positive is that, that it is available across Snapdragon, Intel, and AMD. Now, it's always one of those weird things here where, people, kick and scream saying, that there has to be an AMD version of it. So in this case, good news is that there is the AMD option. Microsoft does not have an AMD option for these in Surface devices at the moment. So, not saying me saying at the moment isn't an indication that it's something that they're planning on doing or whatever. They have done AMD Surface devices in the past, so there's always that possibility that they'll do it again in the future. Now, in terms of like looking towards the future here, so having like NPU capabilities built in, so this is just something that's going to be taking up CPU die space, moving forward. It's just something that's going to be built in. The question is, and I think this is where people are sort of still struggling a bit, which is, where they're going, okay, well, how do we use this today? And I think one of the big problems that we have when we take a look at Copilot PC hardware adoption for organizations right now is they're not seeing an immediate requirement for it, because they're going, well, hang on, if it means that we can sort of do some accelerated local AI stuff. Well, in this example here, this is just me turning on, you can see here that, it's not a Teams meeting, but using the same things that are available to a Teams meeting, where it will go through and, basically offload the background blur to the NPU, offload things like transcription, audio cleanup to the NPU, your eye tracking, etc. And just to give a bit of an idea as to why some of this stuff is kind of important, is like because sometimes people will say, well, a lot of this kind of stuff here, where we're talking about video processing or whatever, couldn't we just hand that over to the GPU? And it's like, well, yeah, we could. But let me just sort of give you an idea why, especially on mobile platforms, why handing stuff over to the GPU isn't always a good idea. Let's open up everyone's favorite tool, Task Manager. And let's stay on GPU. Okay, so GPU is currently running at 23%. If we take a look at what's actually using the GPU, basically it's NVIDIA broadcast in here that's basically using pretty much, 21 to 22% of that. So basically like 98% of that GPU usage is the NVIDIA app that's doing this processing. Now, so if you sort of think that, hang on, well, okay, this is a desktop machine, so it's, we're not as concerned about power usage, etc. But down here, you can already see that this is running pretty hot. But if I sort of start turning on, so I'm not going to turn on eye contact because the eye contact is really weird. If I start moving my head around, it's incredibly creepy. Let's go down here. Let's turn on this virtual key light. Now down here, they're saying it requires a high-end GPU. They're not joking. I think this GPU is kind of just on the cusp of what can actually run it properly. But here we go. So it's not just the GPU running more, but now basically the temperature is starting to shoot up as well. So if we start sort of translating this kind of stuff to somebody saying, well, can't we just move this stuff over to the GPU? Well, in a lot of cases, the GPU is still going to be, chewing up battery like crazy in that case, whereas anything that we can offload to the NPU. So really here, I guess for me, the thing that's going to be my primary use case with this is going to be Teams. So can I get through a full day using Teams, having the NPU handle video processing, etc. But things like the hardware side, you're basically using the Pluton security processor as opposed to just using standard TPM. One of the things that I like is that the minimum hardware spec is 16 gig of memory and a 256 gig SSD. So the 16 gig, I didn't even notice that when I was looking at, just wondering how much memory does this? Oh, I just realized this machine's got 32 gig. I must have asked the right questions when I asked for one. Like, give me one, make it big and heavy. Okay, so yeah, so here the 16 gig of memory, so people sort of look at this and go, is this what Microsoft's next hardware specs are going to be? And I can't say that I think it would be, because Microsoft trying to get the industry to move away from TPMs over to Pluton, as much as we like the idea of 16 gig of RAM becoming a minimum, I guess Apple have already started heading in that direction. I think they've finally dropped some of the 8 gig models that they've had for a while. So if it's sort of pushing things in the right direction, I like it. But I don't really see these as sort of becoming the core requirements, at least not anytime soon. But it's a good indication of where things are heading. And also just with this device, some of the things that have been kind of nice with it is seeing just how much better things like Windows Hello facial recognition gets, just in terms of how much faster it gets. Even in here, like it's Wi-Fi 7, but like at home I've got Wi-Fi 6E, I think, or whatever. Yeah, I have to check to see what it is, Wi-Fi 6. And it's, like some of the connection speeds that I'm seeing with it are kind of nuts. Like I'm thinking I'm going to have to crawl through the ceiling crawl space to actually plug it into a higher speed port on my Switch, as opposed to a 1 gig port, to see if it's actually really connecting at those speeds. But otherwise, though, some of the things that are a bit weird on the Intel side is that these CPUs don't have hyperthreading. So we're down to, in this example, this is like an 8-core machine, as opposed to us sort of seeing, 8 or so, maybe there's 8 true cores, but we're used to then seeing the additional hyperthreading cores in there as well. But so far, battery life seems to be really good. I did cheat a little bit. As when it's got power, I've ramped it up to maximum power instead of balanced, and I am seeing the CPU speed clock go up a lot higher. Okay, so just a few things then around. Well, I guess just first of all, any questions around just Copilot PCs in general? And is it something? So, how many of you are sort of seeing it as it's something you'll potentially look at in next gen refreshes, but maybe not something you look at for a refresh right now? Like, is there something that's driving you towards these?
We see a lot of customers who still associate them with ARM.
Yeah,
and like write them off because of that and go, oh, we can't consider it because we need the printer drivers or whatever for ARM. So we can't use a Copilot PC, even though there are Intel Copilot PCs now.
Yeah. And and I guess that's one of the things. And even like the problem is even if somebody sort of is going, oh, I want to get a Surface device. If you just go out to like the Microsoft store and you just take a look at like Surface laptops and Surface Pros, unless you switch over to the business section, you don't see the Intel variants there. So again, why would people think Snapdragon is there? But some of the things that are kind of interesting though is that and we'll see this in some of the slides that are coming up, but for obvious reasons, certain things rolled out to Snapdragon earlier than they rolled out to Intel and AMD. Maybe being available was part of the conversation. But even moving forward, like it looks like there's still going to be, we've got a few things that are still going to be rolling out on the ARM side before they roll out on the x64 side. But I wouldn't expect that to be something that lasts forever. It's just a matter of the development would have started long enough ago on some of these things, and we'll talk about some of those things pretty shortly anyway. Okay, so first thing here is something that I don't know how much of a conversation I'd normally have around this with a lot of organizations if we weren't talking about Copilot PCs. But if an organization that was sort of bought in on the concept of Copilot PCs, they want to take advantage of everything they're doing, and they want to do it as quickly as things are available, then insider builds are the way to go. Now, down in the bottom right corner here, I asked Copilot to generate an image of a canary with the prohibited icon around it. Well, originally I asked it to create an image of a canary with the Ghostbusters circle around it. And it thought about it and it came back, I can't do that because of some of the terms you've used. And it's like, Ghostbusters, copyright infringement, Microsoft's commercial copyright protection guarantee. And it's like, okay. So I basically, so I sort of just cleaned up the query. I actually had to search what that red circle-y thing was called, and it's the prohibited sign or the prohibited icon. And that did it for me. Now, what I've got over here is that, the traditional way that we would have sort of managed insider builds, if we were managing them, is it would have been through update rings. And the thing here that I'm trying to call out here is that, Canary isn't available there. And basically here, Canary, kind of like why your Office Insider fast releases aren't available. It's something that, and especially with this one, like Office Insider Fast, I don't think is as problematic as some people might think. There are some use cases where probably not the best idea when it's bandwidth limited. But with the insider builds, somebody getting pushed onto Canary and basically getting pushed down the path of a weekly new, basically a new in-place upgrade of Windows every week or most weeks, probably not really the experience that you want people to have. So I kind of understand why they do suppress it there. But just because it's suppressed here doesn't mean we can get to it elsewhere. So the options that we've got there is either through CSP, and it's so it was in CSP first, but now it's also in Settings Catalog. We can basically just go in and choose, look for branch readiness level, and the number that we want is 128, and that will go through and force the devices that we're targeting to only accept Canary. So in that case, it's something that I've gone through and just applied it to all my test VMs just to sort of keep them on that. And I just sort of self-enrolled other devices in that anyway, just so I've got consistency across the different machines I'm jumping between. But just to sort of let you know here that, if you do want to basically force Canary, sorry, I use that force word. If you want to enable the ease of deployment of Canary, regardless of what setting the user selects, you can do that. And it's kind of funny because it appears you can choose like the dev and beta releases. You choose the checkbox, you say, okay, hit apply and check for updates, and it automatically pushes you over to Canary. Yeah, nice little bonus there for people. So with this is so the Canary build, I guess, is going to be quite niche in terms of who we're targeting. But again, like if an organization says, hey, we really want this stuff quickly, then this, I guess, this is where, Canary is always going to be that place where you're getting new things rolled out really, really quickly. Okay, so now the side effect of this is because when I created the setting, I used the CSP setting for custom URI. So now I've got to go through, disable that, and create a proper settings catalog profile before I forget what the purpose of that one was. Now, just quickly here in terms of some of the things that have sort of been rolled out over time. Now, I'll jump in and sort of show you the post that sort of discusses the Wave 3 pieces, but it's kind of weird here in terms of the, actually, let me see if I can find it. Okay, so I'm just going to sort of jump out to a URL here for you and just show you something quickly. Okay, so just on the Windows 11 requirements page, they do have a specific section in here for Copilot Plus PCs. Now, unfortunately, it's not accurate, or sorry, it's not inaccurate. It's just not all inclusive. So one of the things that's missing from this is it's not mentioning the Pluton security processor in there, but it's calling out the other things like the memory, CPU series, etc. in there. So, so that was just one thing that I wanted to call out. And then there was another page that I wanted to call out as the follow-up to this one. So, so the reason why I think I've showed, was it that page? Oh yeah, so it was down here further. So this is where they were referring to the Wave 1 and Wave 2 rollout pieces. And all they're really doing here is linking out to blogs over on the Windows Experience side. But seeing that they've got a Wave 1 and Wave 2, I'm going to declare that there is a Wave 3 that they haven't added into that. And that Wave 3 is this post from the end of March. So basically, similar posts where they're talking about some of the new things that they're adding in. And what you'll sort of notice if you take a look at this is a few of these things are basically saying that, in this case, like here's an example of it saying, people, the voice access stuff is coming to Snapdragon X series, and AMD and Intel devices will get it later on. And then even down here, things that, some of the AI-enabled creativity features. So some of these are kind of, I'll switch to the other PC in a moment just to sort of highlight some of this stuff for you. But yeah, there's some weirdness around some of the Copilot integration pieces here, because some of it is local integration, local NPU integration. Some of it is Copilot cloud-based integration. But what they're basically saying here is that there are some Intel and AMD are playing catch up in some of these areas as well. So again, I don't really think that's going to be something that will go on for too long, just because it's like I'm trying to think of how I can say it without putting my foot in my mouth. But it wouldn't surprise me if we got sales numbers. It would not surprise me if the AMD and Intel Copilot PC numbers were greater sales than the ARM version. And going back to what Tom was saying, where there are some people who've still got hesitation around ARM, and I choked at the last second. I had the chance to go down the ARM path, and it was like, I want to be able to carry one device, not one device and a backup device just in case. Okay, so there's quite a few things that are being added in here, and the other thing that I just wanted to quickly show you in here was that where's the Windows roadmap? Here we go. So in terms of finding out when new things are coming, we'll use it as an opportunity to also talk about Windows roadmap in general. But in this case, if we just say platform Copilot plus PC exclusive, and we take a look, in this case, there's like 9 things that it's listing in here as exclusive. So basically, preview, click to do, but then it's sort of showing you some of the other things in here as well. Now, I think with some of these, I'm kind of curious with all of these, because I haven't sort of dug in. Actually, I think it was actually there on the screen. Okay, here we go. So this is why some of the things that I was noticing here didn't quite match what I thought was happening, but here we go. This is kind of giving us that information. So in some cases, you'll see that something says available from December 2024. But if we take a closer look, it's, this improvement is available on Snapdragon X Series, Copilot Plus PCs with support for AMD Ryzen, etc., coming soon. So, and again, we've got a similar thing there where it's like, hey, it's already on Snapdragon. And once again, up here. So in this case, it's, I guess for the people who sort of jumped on the ARM bandwagon for this one, their faith is being rewarded at the moment. So I guess that's a positive. So I'll have to ask Steve if he feels loved for getting these unique features, or at least unique features earlier than other people. So let me just quickly switch machines here. Okay, so is that being shared?
Not yet. Yep, we can see your screen now.
Yeah, okay. So let me just sort of jump in quickly here. What do I want? I want paint. Okay, yeah, so there's a few different things that I wanted to sort of talk about in here. So first of all, there are some of these capabilities in here that we can basically leverage the NPU, and in order to go through and set it up, it actually does need to download the model. So like I think that was like 700 or 800 meg that it had to download. So if you are sort of rolling these out, some of the extra setup elements you need to think about might be, there's like an SLM potentially coming down. Now, the other things here that may cause some concern is that if I just jump to image creator, for example, let me see if I've got this configured properly. Let's choose watercolor, and it's saying, suggesting it's a cat walking in the woods. So I'll just use that one. Oops, wrong keyboard. Let's see if this works. And in this case, there's some weird stuff that's going on here. Now, here it's something where we actually need to sign into Paint with a consumer account, with a Microsoft account. And in this thing here that I'm doing is actually consuming AI credits from a Microsoft 365 home or family plan. Please, I don't know why that. Oh, as you text content, safety failed. I used their exact wording. Draw a cat as a watercolor. Surely that's not a violation of anything. I think there might be some other issues occurring down here. So I had to sort of do a swap of the MSA that was associated with it. But that does not look like it's going to work. But basically down here, actually, there's something weird going on. It's not showing me the AI credits balance. So this is one, let's get rid of that one. That's one that, does need you to be, does need to have another service connected into it. But then things like the co-creator, for example, I think the generative arrays that will just work with the local NPU. And I think remove background will also work with the local NPU. But just sort of be aware there that, if people do want to use the image creator, first of all, that it requires a Microsoft account, and that Microsoft account needs to be associated with if we just sort of jump in and take a look in here, it's basically, popping up an advertisement for Microsoft 365 home plans. Actually, we don't want to go into that page. It's because I'm signed in. Let me sign out. And we'll go back and try it again. And I was hoping it would actually take me to the page where you can actually see that it's trying to get you to buy a plan instead, but it's not going to cooperate there with me. And let's get rid of that. Okay, let me just switch back over to the other machine. Okay. So back over to this one. And so I guess then just to sort of highlight it in here that there's a few things that they're saying that, do require a Microsoft account. So co-creator in Paint. Oops, sorry, that's not sharing. Let me try that again. Yep, that's better.
Yep.
Okay. So over here, it's basically showing you some of those things that do require a Microsoft account. Now, I don't know, if any of you actively block Microsoft accounts from being added in to prevent things like, things being downloaded or purchased from the store or anything along those lines. But just to sort of be aware, if you are sort of doing any kind, if you are blocking that at all, then that's something that is going to impact some of the image capabilities there. So hopefully, for this, the thing that sort of gets me with this one is if I've got Microsoft 365 Copilot, surely I could use that to fund or not fund, but to get those capabilities in there, because I could just jump into a prompt and create it like I did with Canary. So just a little bit of inconsistency there that hopefully gets addressed. Now, in terms of future sessions here, I guess over time, I think it's probably worth us coming back and sort of, especially, with recall and a few other things, it's probably worth sort of digging into some of this stuff, some of the, basically it going through and, when it's indexing your system, basically doing, text, so image to text conversion, et cetera, for part of your local indexing capability. So I think there'll be some pretty cool stuff that we can show there. But I guess probably, I think probably waiting for a proper recall session is probably the way to go. And in that case, it's the new recall, not the recall that was originally announced. And then the other thing as well, I guess at some point is just sort of probably just doing a bit of a check-in to see what's happened in the world of NPU supported applications. Because so even though you could go through, use Visual Studio Code, download some SLMs, etc., run them locally. But I think for a lot of people, it's something where they'll sort of just want to see, okay, well, what elements of Photoshop could be enhanced with this and things along those lines. So that's probably something we can take a bit of a look at in the future. But with some of those things, again, I guess for me, it ends up being is it something that could be offloaded to the GPU versus the NPU? And is it something that you'd be doing when you weren't connected to power, et cetera, et cetera? So I guess that's one of the things I'm still struggling with in some cases is, yes, it's nice to offload to the NPU where possible, but is it always absolutely required? Maybe I'll sort of start leaning to I'm not going to use it if it's not NPU enabled, but I think that would be a terrible stance to take at this point in time. Okay, anything else on Copilot Plus PCs that anyone sort of wants to throw into the mix for a future session?
Would like to see the cat.
Hmm? Yeah,
Like
oh yeah,
to see the
you'd like
cat.
to see you'd like to see it working.
Yeah.
Well, you got to see the canary. So, is that okay? Okay, so with that, let's jump into the final section. So the thing, so one of the things that I was trying to track down for this, but it doesn't seem like they are readily available for us to actually show yet, were some of the architecture diagrams around how Windows 365 Disaster Recovery and Disaster Recovery Plus work. And the reason why I liked those architecture diagrams was, like, at first glance, you'd sort of look at it and go, hang on, it kind of seems to be pretty similar to Azure Site Recovery, but it's actually doing some things quite differently. And because they haven't shared those images yet with us in a way that we can share them without potentially violating NDA, I just thought I'd put this up here as nightmare fuel for people in case you've never had to look at this stuff. But obviously, this is a little bit more complicated than what you'd have to deal with if you were doing your Win365 replication. But it's but I guess really here the takeaways is if you've ever looked at ASR, there are some parts of it that you can kind of figure out on your own in terms of how do they sort of set the stage. So before we get into Disaster Recovery Plus, I think probably just a good starting point is the Win365 Disaster Recovery, because that's been available. Blink, close your eyes for a month or two, and it will have been in market for a year. So it's a Win365 add-on. The pricing is like $5 US per user per month as the add-on, I think. And what that $5 does for you is you can sort of view it in terms of, it provides that ability to basically fail over to a different region during a disaster in your primary region. But also, an underlying part of that is that your snapshots are basically constantly being replicated out to that other location. So if you think about storage costs, and you think about data egress costs in Azure, and you go, oh, $5 per user per month, that's actually pretty good compared to what those replication costs and storage costs would otherwise be there on the Azure side. So in this case, the customer chooses the regions where they want disaster recovery to take place. And in this case, it's something where when we go through and deploy it, we could, so even though I've got down here is, it doesn't require knowledge of Azure Virtual Networking, but if you're using Azure Network Connection instead of, instead of just the Microsoft hosted option, you can still go through and use that. And we'll see that on the next slide. This is one of those things where the idea is kind of like, just let Microsoft do as much of the heavy lifting as possible here. So with this, it should be going GA this quarter. So they're not actually saying this quarter, but I thought this quarter would be easier because it's US spring, or spring 2025, which obviously we all know when US spring is. We don't have to sort of jump into something and ask it that. And so over here, just to sort of show you here, in this example, Disaster Recovery Plus has been selected. In this example, it's using the Microsoft hosted network. But as I mentioned, you could go through and use Azure Network Connection for that instead. But again, it's, if someone's like, oh, I want to use Azure Network Connection, the first question is, okay, why? What are you getting out of it? Or are you doing it because, just because you want more control over the underlying network because you need to know what's happening there? So On the next slide, we'll talk about the RTO and RPO side of things. So I'm not going to dig into those here, but here the pre-allocated capacity. So this is the one that's important. And I guess there's a follow-up question that I have on this that I haven't asked yet. And Aresh, you might want to respond to this after I ask it. But if we're paying extra and we get pre-allocated capacity, what that to me means is people who are just on Windows 365 disaster recovery, not the Plus version, there may not be capacity in the region they want to fail over to. Is that, yeah. So in this case, like, so far I haven't seen the price differential on this one. But normally, as soon as you start reserving capacity, and here when they're talking about capacity, they're talking about CPU. So that is something where there are going to be, like, yeah, I don't want to speculate on where I think the.
I'll just once you finish.
You jump in. Yeah.
I will take over with a screen share, and I'll probably would like to elaborate a little more on this.
So I guess just then quickly then, just so that I can hand over to you for the rest of this, is just sort of quickly here in terms of like the recovery time objective and the recovery point objective here. It's basically here, if you've got up to 50,000 PCs, the target, not the SLA, the target is 4 hours with disaster recovery and 30 minutes for disaster recovery plus. So for some organizations, that's something that if it meets their documented requirements, that's going to definitely push it in the right direction. And over here, it's something where, here we're basically saying it's within 60 minutes for the RPO. So I'm guessing you've probably got some more on these in your slides, Aresh. So if you want to take over and just show yours.
Unfortunately, I'm not as organized as Mark for the slides today, but I'm going to take over for a quick one. Let me know if you're able to see my screen. Is it visible?
Yep, all good.
Awesome. So I just wanted to first emphasize why, like, I would like to emphasize on the use cases first, right? Like, before I go into the details, why would you use something like this? So let's imagine you have Australia East, and if you put all your Easter eggs in one region, and if the region had a problem, you and your entire user base, let's say you've bought 5,000 cloud PCs. Now, none of them would be able to do anything if there was a region-wide problem. Now, remember, we don't have region-wide problems as such off and on. I've not seen yet. Like it's been few years. I've been monitoring it, but I've never seen a region-wide problem yet. But yeah, services could be off and on within the region, and hence it is better if you have critical users. So what one should be doing, let's elaborate the 5,000 user example. Let's say you have 500 of your exclusive users, so 10% of your 5,000 users as exclusive users whom you want to be up and running ASAP. Let's say 100 of them are directors, CEOs, and another 400 of your engineering resources whom you want to be up and running because they are the most critical resources to your company. For such kind of resources where the recovery time objective is you want it to be done quickly, you have to pay for quick recovery time. So you would go with something like this disaster recovery plus option, which is an add-on. So unfortunately, neither me or Mark right now can see it because it is either as an add-on, which you probably have to link it with your credit card, or we have to request it being MVPs. So what I wanted to show you was, if you want regular disaster recovery, right? Because you're not guaranteed resources, and that's the reason the uptime is 4 hours. And you can see the reason being, when you pay for that kind of a level, it starts at this price. However, when you do a disaster recovery for as an add-on where it's done in 30 minutes, that's the kind of difference. You can see how much you have to pay. But still, if you look at it from an angle, from a traditional disaster recovery solution standpoint, where storage replication or geo storage replication was involved, that would also work out expensive if you look at the pricing at which you get this. Plus, the biggest advantage is the time. In 30 minutes, you are up and running. So the tying our example back, 500 users needed a premium disaster recovery plus option. So you already have bought this add-on for 500 users. You've bought and added it into your portal. It will start showing up in your products. It will get listed out here. Once you have it, is the screen showing up right now? It's gone to the your product screen.
Yep.
Okay, so it will start showing up here. Provided I can switch it. Okay, yeah, it'll start showing up here. Once it starts showing up here, you will be able to see that you have that add-on, and then you can tie it up to your 500 users. Once you tie it up, during the provisioning of the disaster recovery plus, what Mark showed you you would see it in the provisioning policy. So you might have to create a dedicated policy where you have disaster recovery plus enabled. So for your 10% of the users, you will have a dedicated provisioning policy, which gives you disaster plus recovery. You select that disaster recovery plus, select the region. Maybe in our context, if you're elaborating the Australia example, you probably might be better off with Australia Southeast as your second option, or Australia Central if you want to do ACT. So those could be your choices as per se, or if you are getting a bit adventurous and you can select a cross region like Singapore, but I wouldn't recommend that. I would say stick within the geography, but a different region. That would probably solve the problem. Once you've done that, you can do bulk actions, exactly what Mark showed you for the previous cross disaster recovery. This is the plus disaster recovery. You could do bulk actions. So if time may come and you wanted all the 500 to be activated or deactivated, you could use bulk operations out here, and bulk device actions can be carried out against your premium plus, recovery plus, not premium plus. And once you do that, you can do a rollback as well. So once you fail on, you can do the fail back as an option. And what you're paying for is the biggest difference being 4 hours versus 30 minutes. That's what actually you're paying for as a difference. And that's why it's a premium offering called as Plus. That's the biggest differentiator, what you get. Plus, remember that time taken when everyone, imagine if there was a real problem in Australia East and everyone was moving to Australia Southeast. Imagine if you had the premium, it guarantees you that you'll get up and running quickly, versus everyone trying to fail over at the same time. That 4 hours is a best case scenario, but it could soon add up. Hence, explore this plus option for your premium users where it makes the most sense and are the most critical resources, and you should evaluate this option for them. Any questions?
So not a question, but just more a comment. I didn't realize that the pricing for Plus had gone live, and yeah, that's
This
my only
is
comment.
AUD pricing. That's another catch. Basically, whenever they do the presentations and the pricing that they put, it looks a little lower because it's USD.
Yeah.
So our pricing is a little bit up. The other difference I would say is that always evaluate your environment. You don't need this option for everyone in the organization as well, because it is not cheap as well at the same time. So do evaluate and categorize your user base, whether with the disaster plus or the cross-site region disaster recovery, and then segregate where you could offer the business that the first 500 come online in less than 30 minutes, the remaining, whatever, 400 or another 800 come online in the next 4 hours, up to 4 hours. It's not like needed exactly 4 hours, it's up to 4 hours.
Okay, something else I think is probably a good part of this conversation is the customers who are demanding these kind of changes or enhancements to RTO and RPO. There are also customers who want more nines at the end of the 99 dot whatever percent. So they are used to, so customers that demand that, they are used to paying these kinds of extra amounts. So it's one of those things for the people who don't need it. They're the ones who'll be like, oh, that's a lot of money. But for the people who need it, they'll be like, where do I sign?
Banks are your favorite example for this solution, and they wouldn't even flick their eye for paying this for a DR because they anyways have a DR solution for their VDI as well. So if this gives them like an RPO, RTO of such less 30 minutes kind of a thing, they would be signing it in bulk. In fact, for the entire user base without even thinking twice. Very popular use case in the financial sector.
Yeah.
Does it involve storage replication as well? So the user can get back right where they left off or no?
Very good question. And that's what they make it very clear that you still be better off doing your personal things in OneDrive for Business. So put your stuff, and they do mention that in this article itself, that do your ensure your user related stuff at all point in time lives and breathes in OneDrive. And they've mentioned it in the article around that. So yeah, there you go.
Yeah, no work saved. I think primarily like applications as well, that's where it gets tough. Like if they have to go and install a bunch of apps, suddenly the RTO is an hour and not 30 minutes.
Exactly. And then multiplied by whatever amount of users you have to get it done immediately. And that's why only your PC state, your cloud PC state would be done and dusted. You would have your apps if they were present in the previous state. It'll all be there, but your data probably through OneDrive on demand.
There's also, I don't have the link handy, but there's also that Learn article where they're basically, what is it? It's the, what's the name of it? Something like, your BCDR options for Win365, where they, basically, they're sort of saying what you were saying is, use OneDrive. OneDrive is the center of this universe. So like OneDrive plus your enterprise state roaming, plus your settings, sync, etc. Kind of it's the starting point of the conversation.
Absolutely. So that's, I think it's a great feature, a much needed feature, which the financial enterprise was asking for a long period of time. And luckily now it's getting GA'd in spring 2025. If I get at any point in time, if I get this feature in the forthcoming sessions. We could show it live, as in like, whatever we could demonstrate, because none of us have the access as well, even right now, to show you the drop down of the regions. And remember, not all regions are allowed. That's another big caveat as well. So you would have to pick and choose your alternate regions based on the Azure region supporting the disaster recovery plus. So that's the other caveat. It's not necessary that all the regions within the geography would be supporting that, and hence it's going to be depending whether the Azure region has been enabled with disaster recovery or the storage replication underneath.
Yeah, because I'm just sort of thinking about the pre-allocated compute side of it. It's going to, like, that would be like one of the big things that would really limit some of its ability to go into certain regions that are kind of scaled down a bit.
That's right. Not all regions are same as well at the same time. Hence, that's why it will be very interesting if we had the feature. I'm willing to bet Australia Central might not be as a selection point as well. It would either be Australia East or Australia Southeast, Melbourne, probably your second option.
Yeah.
Any questions?
Does the service have an IRAP and that sort of thing, like Windows 365 in general? Because maybe Central, sometimes they do a Central and Central 2 as replication regions, but only if it's IRAPed.
I'm not 100% sure, and that's why, because we can't test this yet, it's hard to comment at this point in time. But it reminds me of other services, even with the geo storage account. It doesn't allow you to select just all regions. It has to be that region providing the service, and then you can see a small subset of regions allowing that services, is what I'm guessing at this point in time. But yeah.
Makes sense.
Yeah. So one of the reasons why I was hoping to get those architecture slides that we could actually show, so I've got them, but we just can't show them, it's basically just sort of leveraging, from the look of it anyway, a ton of different Azure storage replication options. So in terms of getting IRAP certification, etc., to me, it seems like if the underlying Azure services that it's leveraging and the M365 services being leveraged have already got it, I can just see that this is something where, it's not necessarily just it'll get it, it's a tick on the box, but I think it's probably something that could get it without too much trouble.
Yep, that'd be good.
They're not trying to reinvent ways of moving VMs around, the Microsoft global network or things along those lines. Totally. They've gotten really good at that stuff, at saying, hey, what are these other teams building that we can leverage, and then we get their enhancements automatically.
Yeah, another small tip.
Looks like in the scope, so fingers crossed. Sorry.
If you I've highlighted the picture and essentially highlighted the Azure network connection. So what that essentially means is that you have your own custom network. Yeah. Now remember, if that is into the picture, you also need to ensure your Azure connectivity in that corresponding region. If it is a Microsoft hosted network, that's the least of your worries after that. It's just plug and play, as in from a setting standpoint, nothing changes from your management standpoint. But however, if Azure network connection, that is, if you're using your custom network, you have to take care of your networking in advance of that region. So that's a prerequisite that you have to consider if you're using your own. And this is especially true for large examples that I gave you, and large enterprises would have that in place.
Because even thinking if like if they don't have those environments up and running already with like an instance of like Azure Firewall or Bastion, or actually Bastion not so much, but VPN gateways, etc. Like those things are going to take longer to deploy than these VMs take to start running again.
That's right.
So yeah, you don't want to be in that situation where it's like, hey, your VMs. So Microsoft goes, we met our requirement, but you just didn't have your infrastructure deployed quickly enough.
Indeed. And that's why, like, easiest option is Microsoft hosted network. You don't have to do anything, but that's less likely for the enterprise with banks and especially financial institutions.
So the thing that like I'm still encountering, and I think I've sort of mentioned it before, where like for some reason when Win365 was sort of first introduced, like I thought there'd be a lot more larger organizations just saying, nope, we're not using that. We've got the skills. We want to go down the AVD path. But that just doesn't seem to be the case. It's like, it really seems now like the people who are going down the AVD path are the people who absolutely need it for very specific things. Is that what you're seeing as well on your side?
Yes. But if you, the only use case that I'm seeing these days for AVD is for published applications. That's all.
Yeah.
If that gap also can be taken out with a Windows 365 style based service where just upload the app, we do the heavy lifting in the backend for you, I think literally there won't be any reason that would exist to use AVD as such. Because remember, like we've discussed this multiple times on these meetings, that AVD definitely needs skills. You need wide variety of skills in your team if you're doing AVD. It's not as easy as Windows 365, and you would need significant amount of Azure skills in the backend, especially when it'll get into day 2 ops. You would need significant like different variety of skills from not only networking but storage, and other things within Azure. So if you need less touch, less admin, Windows 365 is just rocking it all over the world. It's probably the fastest growing service, if I'm not mistaken, within Microsoft at this point in time, as in other than AI. But this is like the most widely adopted service internally.
Yeah. So even just like, I'll sort of share like a not a confidential conversation or anything, but like, so for me, one of the things that's kind of been in the back of my mind with the Windows 365 Link device, for example, is like I'm just a little bit hesitant when it comes to new platforms that Microsoft introduces to do certain things, that like, or especially on that, like on the hardware side, where like Microsoft has got an incredible history of releasing physical products that have a V1 and then don't exist any longer. And for Win365, like initially that was something where I was kind of thinking, like I'm sort of like, still sitting on the fence about it. But if you start looking at the number of organizations out there and big organizations that are rolling out Win365, who are doing it through some kind of thin client device. I know we're not supposed to call Link a thin client device. It's a Windows 365 Link device. Even if just like a small percentage of those incredibly large customers commit to buying Link, like it's got a future. It's that simple.
Definitely. if the organization is moving to Win365 Cloud PC, Link device has a very bright future with that whole combo physically on the desk. That I just hope the laptop variant comes in, Link Part 2.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess we just got to wait and see what announcements, but it's like from the look of things with Win365 Link, I think they're going to struggle to meet demand for it initially.
Is it still hard to get one?
No, you can, or it's just that people are sort of just able to access early release units at the moment. But yeah, I don't think you can. Actually, no, I think I'm just trying to think. It was was it early this month? I think they actually became generally available. I think it was this month. I think it was like 1st or 2nd of this month, maybe.
I think someone in the group has one, right?
Oh yeah. But yeah, so they are available, but you have to go through like one of the authorized Microsoft resellers for them, or I guess through one of the disties. They're not something that should end up in retail. It doesn't. Yeah, people would be buying them to the wrong. People wouldn't know what they were buying if they were sitting out at retail.
Indeed. Imagine getting one at JB.
Oh yeah. Yeah, people would just think it was a Nook and then wonder why they couldn't do anything. And I think they were also saying that, for the proper GA announcements, etc., they were going to sort of talk a lot more about what was actually inside it, as opposed to just sort of being, kind of saying it's it is a literal black box. You don't need to know what's inside it.
It is.
Yeah, but of course people still want to know, even though it's like this thing is basically just doing local rendering.
That's right.
It doesn't need it doesn't need a lot of capability. Some of you have got TVs that can do this stuff.
That's right. That day is not far. You probably have a TV Windows app.
Yeah, because all you'd really need is something that could do like what your H.264 or HVC or HEVC type decryption or decoding. The innards could be ridiculously simple, but I don't know if I'm allowed to finish that sentence. Let's wait until there's an official announcement around what's inside. Then I can finish that sentence.
Yes.
There's things.
They never told me the OS name as well. I was after, what is it called? Give me a name.
It's not a commercially available version of Windows. That's what it is.
That's right.
NACAVOW. That's what it's called. Okay. Well, I think that's pretty much it on that side. But if I guess, obviously when they sort of do come out with like the full hardware expose, here's what's inside of it, it's probably worth sort of just talking about it, because again, there'll be people who look at it and aren't appreciating what it is. But again, it's kind of just, when you've got people who've never dealt with thin client devices, the lockdown OSs, the what initially appeared to be quite under-spec'd hardware components in there in a lot of cases. But even for me, like I had something that was like a Wise thin client device that was about 10 years old at one point. I thought I'll plug it in and see if it still works. And it wasn't the best experience, but it was still bloody good for a 10-year-old device that was not built to work with the OS that I was trying to run it against.
Indeed. I think the life of a thin and a zero client from a ROI perspective is accounted for 10 years.
Yeah. And that's the other, and I guess that's the other thing here is just sort of how this sort of maps into the support life cycle, the patch life, what's is this going to basically get the good old Microsoft 5+5 support lifecycle, or is it going to be more closely aligned to the Surface support lifecycle? I think these are some of the things that I think some of it is kind of mentioned a little bit in the frequently asked questions, but not to the degree that some customers will need.
Yep, agreed, totally agreed.
Okay, well, we can
Do
probably
you want to wrap the recording
we can.
Wrap the recording.
Let me stop that. I'm just getting distracted because I've still got that laptop open in front of me. Let me stop that recording here.